Great. Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to our, let's say, small chat on HR and also agility and what will be going on, what's expecting us. So welcome, Perry teams. Welcome.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Great to
You
see
too.
you.
It is great to be back. Thank you, Didem. Yeah.
How are you? How is everything there?
Well, we're adapting. We're creative. I guess we are in a situation we never thought we'd face, but it shows how much you can be a genius and committed. And yeah, I'm just trying to do what everybody else is doing, make sense of this crazy situation.
Yes, great, great. Exactly the same. Exactly the same. Trying to be creative and also trying to look to the future.
Yeah.
So this will be your second time in our HR conference, and this year we are celebrating our 25th HR conference. So this will be the 25th. It's a long way. Many changes have been occurred in HR field as we all experience. And last year when we were thinking about the team, we said let's put in agile or fragile, and we never thought such a massive change or transformation what we will be experiencing. So it was really right now asking an inquiry, and I think this is the right time. So I'm curious about, I know you are thinking, researching and working on design of future of work. So after all the pandemic and COVID situation, what is waiting us at the workplace? So what will happen?
Wow. So you're right, Didem. I've been fascinated by the future of work for a long time, but I think from a very different perspective, as in the advancing technologies that I guess we were all thinking about with artificial intelligence and robotics and automation, and also what that was doing to us in a growing sense of what was work about? What was it for us? And I think we still have those questions. We still have, what can technology do for us in the recovery, and the reinvention is the word I use a lot for the future of work. And what is work to us now? I guess what we are thinking now is work is perhaps redefined by the reactions to the pandemic. So people who we would have considered low skill, low wage are suddenly the key workers who, when we are sat still, they're still keeping the world moving, whether they're in healthcare or logistics or justice or education. And so I think there is that. There's a recognition that work is not just about role and title and privilege. It's about the impact you have on the world and society and people. So I love that we've got this newfound realization of that. And I think we'll take that into the future. I think the near future for us will be built on need and recovery in an economic sense. And I think those people have really shone, and they're now our new heroes. So I love that. I think technology is interesting because, of course, without this kind of technology, then the world really would have ground to a halt. But we've been able to keep going. Okay, we're homeschooling our children and we are connecting with everybody on mediums like this, but we haven't had to stop in many, many cases. So I think that shows a resilience and adaptability that I guess we would hope and has been proven. And my profession, HR, has been the kind of profession where people went, HR does the recruitment and the development and stuff. Now it's like HR does the safety and the sanctuary and the guidance that's kept us going. So I've got nothing but respect for people who've had to suddenly get used to furlough and distance and adaptability, and have really, really shown what HR is capable of. So the future, I think, is more of that. I think it's more of choice, it's more of safety, it's more of consistency in changing circumstances.
Yeah, great. I also witnessing the same whenever I talk with the HR, professionals in this field. I see with the pandemic, the HR is at the core right now, mobilizing the organization around safety, mobilizing the leadership teams and assigning cross-functional teams working and maybe channeling their energies into the next features. So I think, yes, HR is at the core right now. What about agility? We have been working or talking about agility for almost, last 2 years it was a very hot topic. And what do you think? Is it a new norm of organizational design for future?
So I would have said even 2 years ago, yes, I hope so. Now I say absolutely. Not just pandemic reaction, but I think the fact that we have to be more creative about how we deploy people and their skill and their energy and their desires, and how we service like the world and customers now. So I'll take a small example of the restaurant business, who have had to suddenly become takeaways and deliveries, and so have had to use platforms and totally change their business model in hours. And so I think that will continue to be the norm. And so agility has to become the new norm, because stability is not around for long. It is an adapting and changing situation. So both in the way people work, the tools they use, and the expectations and the needs of customers. So I think it's becoming the signature of a new way to work. And the only consistency is the fluidity. So I think we have to adapt to that. That might mean some changes in recruitment, conditions, reward, leadership, decisions. I think we have to deal with long-term perspective, but short-term iteration.
Yeah, great. So almost 2 years ago, there was an international company in Turkey, and they went to a new norm of workplace, let's say organizational design, and they started the agility from HR. And everybody in the industry were like, really, HR? Why HR? So there were really very curiosity about why they started with HR and how it will be going. So what do you think? What are the opportunities for HR, or are there any threats?
So that company I would applaud and say at the time that probably felt incredibly brave and incredibly different, because I guess what I've seen up to now is that agility is being talked about from customer perspective. So to be very responsive to the customer, the front line and the retail and the supply chain have had to show adaptability and agility, and then everything else behind that is still kind of traditional and maybe even divisional. So for HR to say, no, we are going to create the agile epicenter, I think is exactly what I'm starting to see now, not just from pandemic response, but because what it needs is culture, mindset, values, all need to be brought into the agility, and HR has the frame of reference for all of those conditions. So whether that is adaptable recruiting techniques, whether that's flexible ways of developing, whether that's changing the dynamic of when people work, where they work and how they work, all of that comes from HR. And as a result, the ripple is then how does the organization design, facilitate that, accommodate that, and even create learning that creates more of that. So the intelligence and data that we've been talking about for a long time in HR now has to be real-time responsive in order to make decisions that are agile in their sort of delivery. So I can see that it doesn't mean we rule out data and intelligence and evidence. I think it means we have more of it in a different way to give us short-term responses that have long-term gain. Absolutely right.
Yes, great. So when we talk at a Management Center Turkey in terms of our services and everything, we always say agility is also, a kind of culture issue. Not only, skills or new organization design, but it is about the mindset. We have been transforming many memories from years, but now it's shifting. So what are the key mindsets that HR professionals can maybe take as a guidance in terms of that shift? Because probably skill set will be much more easier, but the mindset will be harder.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think it's easier to adopt a new method of operating, but it's more difficult to shift your perspective and belief and evidence on what's worked for you in the past. So there was a book in the 1970s called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And in it, he said that the key ability in the future is to unlearn and relearn. And that mindset is part of that. We have to get much more learning agility so that we are open and receptive to new things that can challenge some of our traditions, but that we have to tune into in order to create an adaptive version in the future. So I think we have to decouple from fixed best practice to emergent next practice. So HR has to get used with experimentation, iteration, and I think that's also involving people more and including them. So instead of HR retreat to create a new talent program and a policy and some guidance and some regulations, we work with a small group, pioneer, reveal evidence, and then replicate with those people. So I think it will result in HR being more agents of change rather than responders to change, who are almost included at the last minute when the organization has changed its design and operating model and then says to HR, oh, can you change the terms and conditions and the recruitment? And then we're often like, well, what took you so long? This is the end of the process. We will actually, I think, be at the apex of the process, and we will probably start a lot of the catalytic change because we will need different skills. We will need different leadership. So the mindset shift is about being more pioneering, but still evidence-led. And I think it's summed up in being able to work in paradoxes, either or, and being able to close that gap. In the past, we've worked with very, very certain conditions. That, I think, has to change massively. So our mindset has to be, it's uncertain, and we will deal with that and create as much certainty as we can, but we know it'll never fix. I think that's our mindset shift.
Yeah. Great recipes. So I hear a lot of those great recipes. What about, I mean, how we can understand that we are on the right track? Because we all know that in transformation, we are going through a gray zone and we really do not know, I mean, maybe where we are. So are there any signs that HR professionals can really say, okay, I mean, we are on the good track? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the first one is in the responses we get from the workforce, the employees, the people who we are there to look after. When we get better ideas and participation and feedback about things we do that add value to them, that's a big tick for me. Then the second one then is that we're involved more early in the leadership decisions. So I think our first temperature check is, do employees now really value us in a different way? And as a result, I think we then have more confidence to tackle those higher level decisions and actually be much more in the center of making those. COVID forced it to happen. CEOs were like, I've never dealt with this before. What do I do? And HR stepped in and went, we have to look after people. We have to make them safe. We have to isolate certain people. We have to keep the business going. We have to disperse and work remotely. And I think that's the shift and the sign that doesn't just happen at crisis, but it happens at reset and reinvention and re-establishing what we are as a company. And I think we can bring the values of the company that we talk about so much to life as the lens we look through to make decisions. And we hold that mirror to leaders and go, is this consistent with us? Because it may sound economically right, but is it ethical for our employees and our customers and our suppliers? And I think when we can find those three criteria are tick and okay, we know we're in a better position.
Great. Thank you very much, Perry. So I just want to encourage our listeners, let's say participants, if they have any questions, so they can definitely use Q&A or chat box, or even from YouTube, they can ask their questions. I have two last questions before finalizing. So we talked about a lot about what HR professionals can do, can maybe focus on, and what about don'ts? Are there any don'ts? So what they shouldn't, any don'ts that they shouldn't?
That's often a question that doesn't get asked, and I'm glad you asked it, because I think one of the things we don't do is that we don't withdraw back after being in such a prominent position. I think we can say with confidence, when you needed us most, we stepped up. Now, you think when things are normal in any shape or form that we go back to being the administrator, No, we need to be in the front of these decisions again. So I think we don't apologize for wanting to be more at the front of the organization. I think we also don't stop learning. So I think we've learned throughout this process, and I've seen such connection between HR practitioners from different competitive companies who've come together and said, none of us have dealt with this before. Let's help each other out for the safety of people. I think let's continue with that dialogue, because we're not sharing secrets. We are looking after enterprises, sectors, industries, not just our own competitive nature. So I think we continue that connection and that broadness. So don't lose that. I also think we should, again, don't talk ourselves back into making slow decisions and big committees, and because we've shown we can adapt very quickly with dispersal and flexible working for people homeschooling children, whatever. Don't go back to creating slow things as a result after that. We've shown we can work at pace. It's a bit exhausting, but with people's commitment, we share the effort. Let's continue that, but maybe less, with less intensity, with a little bit more thought. And I think the other thing we don't do is we don't stop looking for technology and data-led change. Just because we think, we can't afford to invest in automation. Actually, maybe now is the time you should invest in automation, because your people need support in a different way. So I think all those don'ts have a very positive outcome too. But don't withdraw, don't retract, don't stop investing, and don't stop learning.
Don't stop believing yourself. Yes, great. Thank you, Paris. So on 10th and 11th of November, we will be delivering the HR conference. So what will be your highlights of your topic? So are there any teasers that you can share with our participants so that they will be joining us?
I think there'll be two. I think the first one will be more about the process of agility that HR can adopt. So I will, without reservation, want to show what it's like to work using an agile approach in HR. So whether that's to do with large programs or small fixes, but I will talk about the tools, the techniques, the rituals, the language, the shifts we need to make, but then zoom out into how that looks as a model for HR to operate much more in that way. And that will cause some people to be a little bit unsettled by the fact that I'm almost remolding the whole function. So it doesn't look anything like now. It is a much more fluid, almost evolving a beast and entity and sort of function, because I think that's our response. We get good processes that get there quick and imaginatively and inclusively, and then we change the model that accommodates that. That's what I'll be talking about.
Great. I'm very excited. So why are we waiting till November? So I think maybe...
Exactly. But November will be a good time, because I think by then we'll have a little bit more knowledge about what reinvention and recovery looks like.
Exactly. Great, thank you very much. I'm just looking if there are any questions from our participants, any questions around transformational HR, about people strategies in relation with agility. I will just wait maybe a few seconds if we have any questions need to be answered. Yes. I'm also checking if there are any questions from YouTube.
Excellent.
Okay.
I guess while you're doing that, Didem, I think HR has had a lot of questions asked of it lately. Yeah. And I think actually what it's found is that in the past it may have had to go search for a response or pause, but now I think we have an instantness to us. I think we have developed a really fast reaction. We have one.
I see a question. Agility is a mindset, and any tips about spreading this? So how we can include others, or let's say spread the mindset
Yeah,
to the organization.
certainly. I think if your business has anything to do with technology, you will find a lot of friends in that industry who will already be very agile by both method and mindset and delivery approach. So I think there's an opportunity for HR to get closer to the technologists who really appreciate agility and can really help both your skill and competence in that area, and perhaps create leadership at tech and people level that's actually quite compelling. Tech and people as a combined force, I've seen change organizations, and CEOs who are a bit reluctant, perhaps a little bit lacking in bravery, actually change because tech and people are two very compelling forces. I think the other opportunity is there to find experiments that can be done small scale with one leader who believes in the approach, to then prove the concept to the rest of the leadership team. Because if I was a leader, I might need some evidence before I make a big decision, but that evidence shouldn't take a long time. Small experiment, reveal evidence, replicate out the numbers, persuade the top team to go, well, this is crazy. If we don't do this, we're going to lose opportunity, lose revenue, lose people. I think that's how I do it. Tech as friends, combine power, and then experiments.
Great. Piloting and then scaling.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, there is also another question which is very much related. I think it's the same tip for the HR to persuade leaders for this transformation, which you already gave. Thank you for the question. So I'm just checking again if there is any questions.
Yeah.
No, I think no. Yes. Thank you very much, Perry, for joining us in the HR Next HR conference on 10th and 11th of November. And this will be our 25th, let's say, celebration all together. What a great topic. What a great speaker with us, thinker with us. Thank you very much. Looking forward to see you.
Oh, you too, Dim. Thank you very much. And congratulations on 25. So good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye for now.
See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.